History remembers Steve Jobs as the genius behind Apple. His face appears in documentaries, books, and museums around the world. But there is another man whose name is forever connected to Apple's history. Not because he invented the Macintosh, not because he created the iPhone, but because he made one decision, a decision that millions of people still debate nearly 40 years later. His name was John Sculley. To some, he was the executive who pushed Steve Jobs out of Apple. To others, he was a leader trying to save a company that was spinning out of control. So who was John Sculley before Apple? Why did one of America's most successful executives leave a comfortable career to enter Silicon Valley? And why has that decision followed him for the rest of his life? This is the hidden chapter of the man history never quite understood. Before Apple knew his name, long before Apple became part of John Sculley's life, he was already one of the brightest names in American business. He worked at PepsiCo during a time when competition between Pepsi and Coca-Cola was fierce. Instead of competing only through price, Pepsi focused on marketing in bold new ways. One of its biggest successes was the Pepsi Challenge, a campaign where ordinary people tasted 2 unmarked soft drinks and chose their favorite. The campaign became famous and helped Pepsi gain ground against Coca-Cola. Sculley built a reputation as a creative executive who understood how to connect products with people. By his early 40s, he had become one of the youngest presidents in Pepsi's history. Many believed he would spend the rest of his career there. No one imagined that a small computer company in California would change that. Silicon Valley was a different world. When Sculley arrived at Apple, he entered an industry unlike anything he had experienced. Pepsi sold a product people already understood. Apple was trying to convince people that personal computers belonged in homes, schools, and offices. Every decision carried enormous risk. The company was growing rapidly. New competitors appeared almost every year. Technology changed at a breathtaking pace. Sculley suddenly found himself leading engineers, programmers, and designers rather than marketing teams. It was a completely different challenge, an impossible job. Leading Apple wasn't simply about making computers. It meant balancing creativity with financial reality. Investors expected growth. Employees wanted inspiration. Engineers wanted freedom. Customers expected innovation. The board wanted stability. Trying to satisfy all of them at once was nearly impossible. Every major decision pleased one group while disappointing another. Years later, many leadership experts would point to Apple during this period as an example of how difficult it is to scale a fast-growing company without internal conflict. The decision that changed his reputation. Eventually, tensions inside Apple reached a point where the company's leadership had to make difficult choices. The disagreements between Sculley and Steve Jobs were no longer private. The board ultimately decided that Sculley would continue leading the company. From that moment on, many people reduced a complex corporate struggle to one simple sentence. John Sculley fired Steve Jobs. But history is rarely that simple. The decision involved the board of directors, Apple's financial challenges, and deep disagreements over leadership, not a single person's choice alone. Even so, Sculley's name became permanently linked with one of the most controversial moments in business history. Living with one decision. As the years passed, Steve Jobs returned to Apple and led one of the greatest corporate turnarounds ever seen. His comeback became legendary. Inevitably, people began looking back at 1985 through the lens of everything that happened afterward. Interviews with Sculley often returned to the same subject. Not Pepsi, not marketing, not his other accomplishments. The questions almost always came back to Steve Jobs. One decision overshadowed an entire career. Was he really the villain? History often prefers simple stories. Heroes, villains, winners, losers. But reality is more complicated. John Sculley didn't build Apple. He also didn't destroy it by himself. He stepped into a company facing enormous pressures, made decisions he believed were right at the time, and became part of a story whose ending no one could predict. With the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to judge. Living through those decisions in the moment was much harder. Today, when people think about Apple, they usually think about innovation, design, and Steve Jobs. Few stop to consider the difficult choices made behind closed boardroom doors. Whether you believe John Sculley made the right decision or the wrong one, his story reminds us that leadership is rarely black and white. Sometimes, history remembers a single moment and forgets everything that came before it. And sometimes, a person's entire legacy is shaped by one decision. What do you think? Was John Sculley unfairly blamed for what happened at Apple? Or should history remember him as the man who made one of the biggest mistakes in corporate leadership? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to the Hidden Chapters, where every week we uncover the untold stories behind the people, companies, and moments that changed history. Because every legend has a hidden chapter.